KCB102.
The consumption, production and popularity of news coverage has been a revolving door of change throughout the many eras of society. Generational change has meant that young people of today's information age are not engaging with traditional news as they once were. Some theorists say this means that news is of little interest to young people. They say news as we know it is dying a slow and silent death. Perhaps traditional forms of news are doomed to the history books, or perhaps youths are still engaging with news, albeit in different ways. First and most importantly, what is the definition of news? Whilst there are no clear boundaries as to what can be considered newsworthy, the answer lies somewhere in the first three letters. News is something new, something interesting to the public. As referenced by Stephen Harrington in his Week 6 Media and Society lecture, author Dahlgren views news as information used to make choices about the direction of public life. He says, journalism must somehow provide people with informative material to help them make sense of the world and to fulfill their role as citizens. The key term in the quote is the phrase, informative material. For some, this could mean staying on the cutting edge of international news. Perhaps for a youth of Generation Y, however, it could be as simple as staying on the cutting edge of fashion. The definition of news is entirely subjective depending on your circumstances and interests. In 2001, David Mindich quizzed a variety of American citizens on their news consumption habits. The survey, conducted soon after the September 11 attacks, aimed to survey public interest in relevant and current affairs. Unsurprisingly, 61% of the under 30 demographic followed the terror attacks very closely. Other news of the time, though, including the stories on anthrax and the economy, were followed by 32% or less of youths. John Fiske, author of book Reading the Popular, discusses the ideals of relevance and its impact on how people connect with news. Relevance requires connections between the text and the social experience of the reader that precedes it, he says. Reading is a cultural practice, not a set of skills. With this in mind, perhaps youth are simply not engaging with traditional news mediums as opposed to the industry as a whole. Are they instead branching out to find information in a context that they can relate to? Author Jonathan Gray of Fordham University in the United States certainly believes so. In his opinion piece titled, Is New News Better Than No News?, Gray explicitly outlines the decreasing interest in traditional television news in favour of a more entertaining approach. He uses examples of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart and The Colbert Report to contend that news and entertainment can work successfully as one. He says, both are, to my own taste, brilliant parody, and not only play with the news, but demand constant reflection on what the news actually is. Similar in content to these American shows are Australian productions such as The Chaser and Good News Week. Both smartly entertain and inform with their mix of savvy humour and smart subject matter. Academic Stephen Harrington agrees, explaining in his KCB102 lecture that research suggests young people appreciate the ability to explain complex news issues with an emphasis on entertainment. So, are youth really disconnected with modern news? The answer is most certainly not. While Generation Y aren't engaging with news through traditional means, their inclination to attain information through unconventional formats indicate an ongoing interest. The modern definition of news is certainly in a transitional period. Traditional ideals of news are beginning to shift away from conventional formats to suit the tastes of new audiences. With this in mind, it can be said that the youth of today are still connecting with the news, albeit in their own modern, unique ways.